Let's go to the 60s. I talked about that case earlier, 1964. You got the landing with Lonnie Zamora, right? You got the close encounter of the third kind, one of the most well-documented cases in U.S. history. What does the Air Force do? The Air Force tells Lonnie Zamora, the witness, do not talk about the beans, because that is incredibly difficult to explain, right? In fact, they don't want him to talk about the case at all, but particularly don't talk about the beans. 1966, you got UFOs landing in Michigan. You got then Congressman Gerald Ford gets involved, because that's when the Air Force, Dr. Hynek, explains the whole thing away as swamp gas, pisses off then Congressman Gerald Ford. He pushes for congressional hearings. Those happen. As the hearings are ending, I think it's April 4th or April 5th, 1966, there's UFOs landing on the other side of the world at Westall Primary School. It's an incredible case. Over 300 witnesses, including the science teacher who I got on camera. So let's go to, let's see, why don't we jump to the 70s? We got 70s, 1973, Lieutenant Coyne encounters the UFO in a helicopter. The UFO momentarily takes control of his helicopter. He testified at the United Nations in 1978 that was put on by Lee Spiegel and Jacques Vallée and Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Fascinating case. We can go to December of 1980. I talked about that case earlier. Joint U.S. military base in England. Bentwaters, Rendlesham Forest, got a landing, housing nuclear weapons. You got the deputy base commander. You got all these men talking about this crap that's sitting on the ground. Fascinating case. We'll go forward to 1986, Anchorage, Alaska. You've got JAL Airlines with a Japanese pilot by the name of Kenju Chirachi. And fortunately, the reason why we know about this case is because FAA official John Callahan kept records of the cockpit recordings, the radar recordings, the voice recordings of the actual pilot talking about what he's seen. It's absolutely mind-boggling that directly correspond to all the radar data which he has. He went on the record about it a number of times. And he said there was a meeting with the CIA stepped in. I'm just reporting what this guy said, okay? You guys believe me or not believe me, the data's out there, go look at it. It's in a thing I did called I Know What I Saw. He testified at the National Press Club in 2007 with Leslie Kean and I organized as to what was going on. He kept that radar data. Fascinating case. The pilot, Kenju Chirachi, said it dwarfed his airplane. It followed him around. It did maneuvers that were impossible. It made his airplane so small, and he was in a 747, and 747's got an elevator in it. That was 1986. Now let's jump to 1989, 1990. You've got Belgium, and I've personally investigated this case. Belgium, the Belgian Air Force, General Wilfred de Brouwer, said there was objects that were the size of a football field, triangular in shape, didn't make any sound other than a slight buzzing, shooting beams of light down to the ground. Okay, I interviewed de Brouwer. I flew him out from Belgium to the United States to testify at the National Press Club in 2007. He said that two men from an unknown government agency in the U.S. requested the radar data, the tapes. He said, sure, I'll make copies for you, but I needed an official request. They wouldn't do it. He was like, well, that's awfully puzzling. This is General Wilfred de Brouwer going on camera with me. I know, that's what he told me, okay? Now let's go to 1994. Now we got a landing in Africa, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, aerial school, roughly 100 witnesses. Fascinating case. Dr. John Mack investigates the case. He's actually getting funded by also Lawrence Spelman Rockefeller. He was doing a major funding in the 90s about this stuff. One of the best cases, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1996. You got the crash in Varginha, Brazil. Now let's jump to 1997. You've got Phoenix, Arizona, March 13th. 1997. You've got a number of objects. One in particular that caught my interest was a boomerang-shaped craft that, according to the witnesses, and everyone was out under the night sky to get a glimpse of Hale-Bopp Comet at the time, so a lot of people saw it, that floated across the state of Arizona roughly around 5 o'clock to 8:30, from north to south. I interviewed families that were lying on their backs. It's all, I have it all documented. Lying on their backs, and they said this thing was so huge it took 4 minutes to pass over our house. It looked like it was going to land. Well, I also interviewed the governor, Fife Symington. He too saw it and said that he launched his own investigation with Luke Air Force Base, and they had sent planes to intercept this thing. He'd investigated Luke Air Force Base. He'd contacted his people at the Pentagon. They shrugged their shoulders, said, we don't know what the hell that thing was. It had the ability to move very slowly. And when it accelerated and took off, it took off in the blink of an eye. It was gone. Okay, so now let's go forward. Let's go to, let's say, 2004.